Chief Talent Officer here at the Connecticut State Department of Education. And thanks again for joining us. As a reminder, before we get started, this webinar is being recorded. It will be posted on the Talent Department's website for anyone who wishes to review at a later date, or if you have staff that you would like to share this information with. We are now ready to begin. As you are aware, the Talent Office has been and continues to work on the diversification of our educator pipeline here in Connecticut. This work is aligned with our State Board of Education strategic plan, and we've made many strides through the years as we focus on recruitment and retention of educators of color. This year's legislative session yielded us financial resources to enhance and expand our work in this area. We've launched several new initiatives that support your work in diversification, which include Educators Rising mini grants to establish grow your own programs at the middle and high school levels, and most recently, our Aspiring Diverse Educators Scholarship for students of color majoring in education with scholarship awards in the amount of $10,000 annually for a total of $40,000 over a 4-year period. Along with these initiatives, we've been tasked with ensuring that districts will adhere to PA Public Act 23-167, Section 10. This act requires each local and regional board of education to submit an increasing educator diversity plan to the Connecticut State Department of Education no later than March 15, 2024. We know many of you have been engaged in this work for many years and have utilized resources that we've provided the past few years. To assist us with this task, we've partnered with our colleagues from the Region 2 Comprehensive Center to assist us in meeting this requirement and providing you with resources to assist in the process. This informational webinar will focus on expectations of this new requirement and resources and guidance we can provide to you in your plan development. And can we please go to the welcome and introduction slide? Thank you. While this initiative is housed in the Talent Office, there are several colleagues at the department who have and are working with us on this rollout plan. They will each introduce themselves. However, at this time, it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you Deputy Commissioner of Educational Supports and Wellness, Cynthia Sone-Moyano, who will bring greetings.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm inspired to be surrounded by all of my colleagues here today for this opportunity to be part of such an important conversation on increasing educator diversity plans. Although legislatively, this recently just passed, this past session, many of us have been doing this work with a sense of urgency for many, many years, even when it wasn't a mandate. Many of us instinctively have been doing this work. We didn't need research to back it. We just knew that there was a disconnect between the rapid change of our demographics of our students in our schools and the rate of disparity between the racial composition of our teachers and who they were serving in front of them. So many of you may ask, and if we can move on to the next slide, why is this important? It's important because it benefits all of our students. And, you know, all of our students benefit from the talent of teachers from a variety, different background, races, and ethnic groups who have high expectations for them, treat them humanely and equitably, and are culturally responsive, and are willing and able to view students and families as assets. Additionally, our students of color benefit from having teachers from their own racial and ethnic groups who can serve as successful role models, have the potential to possess a greater knowledge of their heritage and culture, and who tend to have higher academic expectations for them. So, you know, we understand that there's a diversity gap between teachers and students, and that continue to exist, not only here in Connecticut, but nationally. But we're excited that we can work together and help support, shape, and change this narrative for our great states, for our students, as well to diversify our workforce. Next slide. So many of you have interacted with our interactive data portal. It's called EdSite. And within the Connecticut State Department of Education, this is where we house all of our data statewide at a district level and as well as a school level as well. And you can really access this at any point, but it really shows our student enrollment counts by race, ethnicity, and educator demographics. And if you see here on this PowerPoint slide, we've been increasing our workforce and its diversity. However, we're still lagging and there's still a lot of work to be done. And so we're hoping that through these plans and working collaboratively that we can have a systemic way of thinking about this work, but also of working on having an actual plan, right? That it doesn't just mean that your HR office is devising a plan of how you're going to diversify your workforce, but it's all hands on deck in doing this work because we need this work and we need to diversify our workforce, and it's going to benefit all of our students. And so currently we're at about a little bit over 11% of diverse workforce, not where we want to be as a state, but it's a start, and we're seeing a trajectory in the positive. So I'm very hopeful that with the plans in place and would be a start for us to do this work collectively, that we can provide some support in that work and that it's not just one person's work, but across the district, it's the work of all the leaders, and that we can provide some tools to you all to be able to do this work. Next slide. Okay, so the call to action. So as I stated prior, diversifying and strengthening Connecticut's educator workforce to ensure that all students have racially, ethnically, and linguistically diverse teachers and leaders who can provide them with the high quality education that they are required to receive. Just this past legislative session, there's been some language change in that now has been put into place, and understanding that language is important. We recognize how unconscious bias and privilege may influence the chances of achieving goals of equity and diversity in our workforce. And we need to mitigate this influence through explicit work on biases and privilege. So one of those big changes that just occurred in this past legislative session was the plan from a minority education recruitment. Now it's being called, obviously, the Increasing Educator Diversity Plan. And Mike, who works here at the office, will introduce himself, but he's going to give you a little bit of a background on this change in Increasing Educator Diversity Plan.
I'm Mike McKeon. I'm the director for the State Department of Education. As Cynthia just noted, originally the legislative language used the word minority, and that was not just with respect to this particular aspect of the statutes, but actually it was kind of endemic throughout the statutes. Given, as Cynthia alluded to, the inherently pejorative connotation of that term, the legislature did expressly change minority to diverse. For those wondering what that means, it essentially has the same statutory definition as minority did, in that 10-156BB of the Connecticut General Statutes has been amended, and diverse is now defined as meaning individuals whose race is defined as other than white, or whose ethnicity is defined as Hispanic or Latino by the Federal Office of Management and Budget for use by the Bureau of Census of the United States Department of Commerce. I know that's a mouthful, but then that's how legislators often draft statutes. So again, that was essentially the same definition as minority had, but it does recognize the fact that as society evolves and there's greater recognition of the power of words, and perhaps unintentional, but nonetheless, implicit connotations of language. The Connecticut General Assembly wisely chose to change throughout this series of statutes the term minority to diverse. So diverse is now the appropriate term to use in this context. Next slide. You know, PA 23-167, it's interesting for various reasons, but Section 9 of it amends what was Section 10-220 subsection A of the Connecticut General Statutes. And, I don't want to dazzle you with all these statutory citations, but 10-220 is a statute which sets forth the duties of the Board of Education. And subsection A is the primary provision that talks about that iterates the different obligations of school boards. And prior to PA 23-167, it did require that districts shall develop and implement a written plan for minority educator recruitment. That's now been changed. It says shall develop and implement a written increasing educator diversity plan for purposes of subdivision 3 of section 10-4A. Actually, the reference to 10-4A was in the prior iteration as well. The difference is, however, is that was essentially it in the prior legislation. Just that they shall develop and implement a written plan for minority educator recruitment. 23-167, however, also created a new statutory provision, and that section 10 can be found in section 10 of 23-167, which it comprises 4 subsections, and it essentially takes the increasing educator diversity plan out of a vacuum and involves the Connecticut State Department of Education. Before, like I said, it was just stated that a board would do this. And now, however, under section 10, this new provision of 23-167, this sets forth timelines, and it also has mandatory language in there. And it requires that a local regional board of education shall. And when interpreting statutes, the word shall, and there are some exceptions, as there are to almost every legal rule, but for the most part, the word shall is interpreted as a mandate. So this is a mandate, and it provides that local and regional boards of education shall submit their plan to the Commissioner of Education. So this now has taken it from just this local or regional initiative. You're still ultimately responsible for it on the local or regional level, but it also, like I said, it incorporates the Connecticut State Department of Education to ensure that these plans are in place and are appropriate. And so under the statutory language, these plans must be submitted by March 15th, 2024. Now, the commissioner is required to review these plans, and the commissioner has the discretion to approve them or to return them to a local or regional board of education if she believes that the plan needs to be revised. If she does return them to a school board, the local or regional school board shall revise such plan by May 15th, 2024. So there is contemplated a fairly prompt turnaround. Now, sometimes, as I said, the word shall is mandatory. There are exceptions, and there is case law to the effect that sometimes when it pertains to timelines, there's a little bit more discretion. But nonetheless, at this point, the legislature wants them submitted by March 15th, and if any ones have to be revised, they would be prefer, or they do at this point at least, direct that they be resubmitted by May 15th of 2024. Another subsection of section 10 of 23-167 requires that these diversity plans be implemented for the school year beginning July 1st, 2024. And these plans not only must be implemented, but they must be made available on the internet website of each local or regional board of education. Furthermore, the CSDE Department of Education, are also required to make the Increasing Educator Diversity Plan available on our website. It's important that there be as much public access, much public transparency, as much public awareness as possible of these plans. This underscores the importance, the critical nature of this legislation as perceived and as implemented by the General Assembly. Okay, the next slide, please. It's interesting that a lot of the statutes in Title 10, and Title 10 is that section of the Connecticut General Statutes that address schools, K through 12 schools, and many of those statutory provisions, including 23-167, make reference to local and regional boards of ed. So at first blush, some people might think, oh, well, okay, you know, we're a charter school, we're an endowed academy, we are a RESC, you know, we're CTEX. This really doesn't apply to us. But it does. The legislature, rather, I think, than going forward and making sure they're including everyone, or going back and revising all the statutes already in Title 10, they have over the years implemented a series of statutes which are sort of like catch-alls. For instance, on the screen in front of you in your PowerPoint slide 1015D, all provisions of the general statutes concerning education shall apply to the operation of the technical education and career system. Also applies to USD 1 and USD 2. USD 1 is, you know, the school system run by the Department of Corrections. USD 2 is the system run by the Department of Children and Families. This goes on, the 1066DD, subsection B, subsection 1, does the same thing for charter schools, subject to all federal and state laws governing public schools. Now, this speaks for themselves. I don't need to read these all to you, but I will note one thing, and this is kind of quirky, in that section 1015E is slightly different than these other statutory provisions, because whereas the other statutory provisions cast a wide net. You know, all legislation dealing with the local and regional school districts also apply to RESCs, CTEX, so forth and so on, charters. 1015E is a little bit more nuanced, and it says all provisions of the general statutes concerning teachers shall apply to teachers employed by incorporated or endowed high schools or academies. Now, some might argue that, well, okay, well, that really doesn't cover this, because this only deals with statutes that directly apply to teachers. However, I think that that's an overly narrow reading of that provision. Obviously, the increasing educator diversity, the whole thrust and purpose of it is to increase diversity in the teaching ranks. So I think it would be disingenuous to read that provision as not applying to or as not including 23-167. So it is just important to keep that in mind, that you can't just look at this on its face and say, well, we're not a local or regional board of ed, so this doesn't apply to us. You have to be aware of the fact that there are these other pre-existing statutory provisions that will take this language and expand it. And, you know, not to get too much in the weeds here, but in construing statute, there's also the courts also recognize the fact that when the legislature creates new legislation, they are presumed to be aware of prior legislation. So in other words, when they did 23-167 and used the local and regional board of education, they were presumed to be aware of the fact that this is going to apply across the board. So that is why, and again, it underscores the critical importance of this statutory initiative. So I will pass this back on to my colleagues.
Next slide, please. Good afternoon. Under the category of good news, this slide will provide information regarding 2 currently available resources on the SDE's website to support your increasing educator diversity plan creation. The first is the guidebook for hiring and selection. By engaging with the guidebook, you will be introduced to the language of the work, You will understand the continuous improvement cycle, which starts with problem identification, because getting the problem right is essential to finding solutions that can help you achieve the desired results. And you will also have the opportunity to read the Brookside Story case study, which illustrates how culture and implicit bias can negatively impact efforts to increase educator diversity. The guidebook also contains tools to help you examine culturally responsive hiring practices through a lens of racial equity. The toolkit is guidance designed to help you develop an action plan that clearly defines and communicates data-informed goals, strategies, and indicators of progress, specifies key elements of effective implementation, and details how you should engage in cycles of continuous improvement to sustain your efforts and achieve your goals. Next slide, please. Importantly, here is the template that you should use in order to create your increasing educator diversity plan. It is the first document in the appendices for the toolkit. I will hand it over to my colleague.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jessica Ocasio, part of the talent department. And I know many of you are having lots of questions stir up into your minds as we discuss this very important piece of legislation that all districts will be abiding by. So there is technical assistance, supports, and resources for those that may be working on this increasing educator diversity plan. We have our informational webinars today, and we will have a second one on October 30th from 2 to 3 as well. It would be a repeat of today's session. So if there's any person within your department, district, school that was not able to attend today, they can jump on to October 30th and ask any pertinent questions that may come up as you guys are working on your plans between now and then. We are going to have a FAQ document available to everyone that will be posted on the talent department's website through the CSDE as early as November. So in a couple of weeks, we'll have that ready. Any questions that are populated into the chat, and I do see a few people have been posting questions, we'll be sure to include those questions on the FAQ document with some responses to help support you guys understanding what you need to do for the IEP plans. We're also planning on having professional learning and technical assistance webinars in November and January. Again, dates are to be determined, but we will have those professional learning opportunities. And again, utilizing the West Ed template that's found within the toolkit is going to be your greatest resource to navigate how to plan out your increasing educator diversity plans. We also will have office hour signups with Regina and myself. We will have dates and times shared with everyone. Again, it will be posted on the talent department's website, and there'll be times where you may sign up for any questions or to have more in-depth conversations with Regina and myself regarding the plans. Please, by all means, feel free to reach out to us. We do have the increasing educator diversity email address for those that may have questions that are burning right now that you want to ask us ahead of time. You will find it at the end of this PowerPoint presentation. So again, in the meantime, if there are questions that you want answered sooner rather than later, if we're able to do so, you may email us at that email address that will show up at the end. As my colleagues mentioned, the IED plans are due by March 15th. And there is going to be a platform for all of the submissions to be uploaded into. So many districts are familiar with the updating or uploading of the EES plans. So whether your district wanted to continue flexibilities, this year or not, it's going to be the same platform that you're going to be utilizing for this as well. We'll be using the Qualtrics platform, and that's where you will upload your board-approved IED plans by March 15th. Once those plans are reviewed, you will get correspondence from the department whether or not you need to revise your plan with some feedback. And if that's the case, then there'll be a secondary link for you to submit your revised IED plan, which is due May 15th. Again, only if it's applicable. You may submit a plan that is spot on and not have to worry about revising. However, for those that may need to revise, there will be a secondary link. The greatest, most important piece of the resources that my colleagues have discussed already is those toolkits. So Gotti, can you switch to the next slide? So within the toolkits and guidebooks, there's an extensive amount of information on how to best approach your plan for your district. There's lots of fillable forms as well to help you with creating your plans. And again, this should be an all-inclusive plan, making sure to involve all critical partners within your district, your DEI supervisors, your cabinet members, central office, as well as, administrators and fellow teachers as well. So please make sure to be very aware of who you're having participate in your development of your plan. So that way we can make sure that we are including all voices to make sure that we're doing our best effort to really look at what steps need to be taken. In this PowerPoint are the links to the toolkit and guidebook. I know Regina posted it in the chat for you as well if you want to take a look at it right now. Also, the most important piece is looking at EdSite and looking at your educator diversity dashboards. Really looking at your numbers within your districts and schools right now, looking at the trends that have occurred over the past few years, and trying to come up with what would be the best approach to increase your educator diversity within your districts and school. So please, by all means, visit those websites, click on the links for the guidebook and toolkit, and they truly will be the best sources for you to go ahead and start the planning of your IED plans.
Thank you, Jessica. Now we have created what we call top of the mind questions or FAQs for you, which I'm sure you have many of them. So the first, what if we don't submit a plan or don't submit one on time? Are there consequences or penalties for not submitting or late submission? We all realize that this is the first year of implementation of you all submitting your district plans. So we seek as a department to be proactive and not punitive. The legislation currently is silent regarding consequences or penalties, but if a plan is not submitted as set forth in legislation, there will be outreach by the Deputy Commissioner and myself regarding the reason for non-compliance. Second question, what if we need an extension of... Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Shawana, but
yes,
I need to know that you're absolutely correct. The CSDE does not, it does not seek to be punitive. At the same time, just as kind of a heads up, and just so people are aware of this, the language that is set forth at 10-220 subsection A of the Connecticut General Statutes, as amended by 23-167, does provide that should develop and implement a written increasing educator diversity plan for purposes of subdivision 3 of section 10-4A. 10-4A sets forth the educational interest of the state. So theoretically, the failure to comply with the statutory mandates could constitute grounds for the initiation of a section 10-4B complaint against the local district. Obviously that's not something that the CSD would be looking to race to do, but if there was a somewhat, what was deemed to be a somewhat willful non-compliance with this statutory mandate, that would be something that would be a potential response. So as a lawyer, I always have to bring the bad news. So I just want to throw that in there. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. Our second question, what if we need an extension of time? Will that be permitted? If so, How and to whom should the request be made? Request for an extension of time must be submitted in writing to the email address on the screen, sde.iedplans@ct.gov. We've created a special email address just for this initiative and all of the diversity plans. You must state the reason for the delay and provide a date by which the IED plan or the revised plan will be submitted. Request for extension will be reviewed by the Deputy Commissioner and Chief Talent Officer. What if a plan is submitted that requires revisions, but revisions are not made or cannot be submitted by May 15th? The response to that is what I've already stated in number 1 and number 2. Next slide.
Question number 4 is, do we have to use the IED plan template in the toolkit to submit a plan? Yes, it was created for that specific purpose, and it will definitely be a great resource to really look at all aspects needed for your IED plan. Question number 5, how will plans be assessed? Plans will not be assessed. Plans will be reviewed. IED plan should reflect your strategies to move the priority of increasing educator diversity forward. The CSDE, with support from the Region 2 Comprehensive Center, will provide resources, technical support, and feedback to facilitate your IED efforts. Staff at the R2CC are experts on the research and evidence-based reporting the value of the IED for all students. Question number 6, what instrument or rubric will be used in plan review? A rubric is being developed to guide reviewers in identifying strengths and areas for improvement in submitted plans.
Next slide, please. Question number 7, who will review a plan and approve it, recommend it for approval, or provide? At this time, the plan is to have the SDE and the Region 2 Comprehensive Center staff review the plans. The CSDE has been working with R2CC for the last 4 years on efforts to help the state of Connecticut and the SDE increase educator diversity, and some of that has included coaching activities and professional learning, which a number of Connecticut districts have already participated in, and the R2CC was also instrumental in developing the toolkit to support IED plan creation, and WestEd actually created the template tool that we recommend that you use for your IED plans. Question 8, will the SDE monitor the IED plans? There is no legislative requirement that plans submitted in the spring of 2024 be subject to ongoing monitoring. Nevertheless, the SDE does intend to explore next steps to continue the momentum that the current legislative requirement provides to advance our priority of diversifying Connecticut's educator workforce.
Do we have to submit plans annually? Currently, there is no legislative requirement for yearly submission of plans, but that may change. It is important to us to give you time to implement your IED plans. Question number 10, will you provide a sample or model plan? Yes, we are currently working on that, so stay tuned because more resources will be rolled out in the coming weeks, including specific examples of strong IED plans. Next slide. If you have questions or comments after this webinar, please feel free to send your inquiries to the email address on the screen, and know that this presentation will be uploaded to the Talent Office webpage within the next 24 to 48 hours. And at this time, we will open the floor for any questions that you might have. Feel free to put those in the chat. And for those that don't have questions, we thank you for joining us for this webinar today.
Dr. Tucker, one question is, does this apply to the APS EPs, approved privates?
Yes, we consulted with our legal department, and yes, this does apply to the abscess. You must complete a plan.
The question is there data available on certified diverse educators who are not currently employed?
We can provide data on individuals by certification. However, certification area. However, a person does not have to complete when they are registering to assign their EIN number. They do not have to respond to race and ethnicity questions. Some do and some do not. Is there a timeline on rubrics being available? How will resources be provided? I'm going to kick that one to Regina and Jessica.
Currently, there is no specific timeline. We do understand that time is of the essence in terms of implementation of this mandate. So we are working feverishly to get some additional resources to you. As soon as that information is available, we will send out an email blast, and we will also post announcements on the Talent Office webpage.
The biggest piece of advice that I would give to everyone is just really looking at that toolkit and guidebook and using that template that's found within the toolkit. That essentially is going to be your template to answer or to include all the important information that you need for your IED plan. So take a look at the template, look at all the different components found within the template, and if your IED plan includes or is pulling aspects of that template into it, which we recommend or would like you guys to use that template, then that essentially is going to guide, that's essentially what's going to guide the rubrics for providing feedback to the districts.
Here's a question. Can you share any changes being made at the state level, particularly in terms of certification flexibility that may be useful in the development of our plans? We do have the Connecticut Education Certification Council that is currently convening and will continue to convene. And their work is that of doing a thorough assessment and potential rewrite or overhaul of our certification regulations here within the state of Connecticut. There is no time frame for that to be done, but there are some short-term and long-term goals that the committee is working on. Will the Educator Diversity Policy Oversight Council be publishing their efforts in this process? The work is critical. We will publish whatever, yes. This information will be published as well as any other documents from the Policy Oversight Council that would be resources to assist all districts with submission of their plans. Partnerships the CSDE is creating with local universities to increase diversity. We are working with local universities on several initiatives. One with our alignment of our Grow Your Own programs through Ed Rising. We offered mini grants this year, and many of our districts have taken advantage of that, of starting their Grow Your Own programs at middle and high school level that feed directly into our EPPs. And they are also offering resources to the students that are entering their EPP programs. We now have the Aspiring Educators Diversity Scholarship Program, so that's another way to enhance and increase diversity from the middle school, high school level into our EPP programs. Trying to see what else we have here. Okay, Mike answered the question on, and Mike, you may just want to repeat that, on board approval of these plans.
Shawna. Yeah, I noted this is required as part of 10-220 subsection A, which is entitled Duties of Board. And that subsection starts out by saying local and regional boards of education shall, and then it iterates all their duties. So ultimately then, pursuant to the statutory language, it's the school board that is responsible for creating and approving these plans. Now, typically, as you know, school boards very often work through their superintendent of schools, who under statute is the CEO of the board, and the administration would typically do the heavy lifting. But ultimately, because it is going to be a duty of the Board of Education, the board does have to approve it.
Thank you.
You're
Next
welcome.
question. Will there be additional guidance regarding the Alliance District Increasing Educator Diversity Grant and how that grant can connect to individual district IED plans? Yes, information was sent out today to districts regarding the IED grant, and there will be an informational webinar that will be forthcoming, I believe, later this month on those grants, and we'll cover that. A question, this is the last one about EdSite and its accuracy. The data that is listed on EdSite is accurate. We gather that from the districts. It's what you submit and is uploaded to EdSite via our performance office. If you think that there's any information that may not be accurate or correct, please notify our performance office. And that's the last question that I have in the chat. Oh, thank you. I see one more. Are there plans to have districts update their approved IED plans regularly? I cannot speak to that, but what I will say is there may be an amendment to the legislation during the next session that might require that. So we're not sure. Right now it does not, but it possibly can. All right. Thank you all very much for attending today's webinar. We hope that you found this information helpful and useful as you begin this process within your districts. And please know that we will have another webinar on October 30th. So if there is someone in your district who you feel needs to attend and could benefit from this information, please have them register and/or share the link with them. This presentation will be posted on the Talent website, as well as the recording. And if you think of any other questions that you may have, please feel free to email us at the email address on the screen. Thanks again for joining, and have a good rest of the day.